Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Propcast. My name is Louisa Dickens, host of the Propcast and co-founder of Elamori, the global PropTech recruitment and search consultancy. In this podcast, we'll explore how the digital evolution of the real estate industry is impacting the property market. The aim of each episode is to introduce you to a PropTech innovator and discuss how their work has created a shift in focus when it comes down to digitizing the built environment. If you're interested in finding out more about PropTech or applying for a job in this space, or keen to know who the big players are that are moving and shaking the real estate industry up, we have you covered, and we will be bringing you an episode each week to connect you to the VCs, PropTech startups, and real estate professionals from around the globe. Also, a big shout out to our sponsors of the podcast, ReamTech and Pretech, who you will hear from during the episode. On today's podcast, we are talking about the smart building space, and our guests on today's show are James Dice, founder of Nexus Labs, who's also another fellow podcast host, so definitely check his out too, and the wonderful Ramya Ravichandar, who's Vice President of Sustainability Products for JLL Technologies. So welcome, both of you.
Thanks for having me, Lou.
Thank you, Lou. Glad to be here.
For those who are not familiar with our guests who are joining us from the US, James is the founder of Nexus Labs, which is an international community of engineers, energy managers, technology vendors, building operators, and real estate investors working together to define and bring to life smart buildings. James has years of experience as a licensed engineer working in energy analytics and optimization, fault detection and diagnostics, and predictive operations and maintenance. James has built a holistic understanding of and network around smart building strategy and execution. And Ramya, who's joining us, who's also done the Nexus course, is currently working at JLL Technologies and is responsible for building, creating, and scaling disruptive clean tech products and solutions. She has over a decade of experience launching new products using AI, edge, and IoT. She's currently fueled by a sense of urgency to deliver technology products that help meet our global sustainability goals. She has a PhD in computer science from Virginia Tech, and we'll be learning a lot more about her role, her remit, and what JLL Technologies is doing in space in a moment. We'll also be covering a bit more about the course. So those who are looking to take it, you'll know a bit more about the modules, what the key takeaways are from it, from James, and we'll also be going into the smart building space and how it's going to affect the future of our buildings and key areas of it. And I'm looking forward to hearing and learning more about it. So without further ado, and James, why don't you kick us off and talk us through Nexus Labs, how to come about, what's it grown? You've had various cohorts. So for our audience listening, please let them know how to get involved in that.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, so glad to be here. Big fan of the podcast. I just listened to the episode with Prasan Kale over the weekend. Love how you have multiple guests on. I'm going to have to incorporate that into the Nexus podcast. It's an awesome concept. Yeah, so Nexus Labs, so it started as a newsletter. I was working full-time at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in the US, and it started as a newsletter. Just wanted to share my thoughts on the space. Quickly grew into the podcast. I was having some conversations and realized, hey, other people would probably benefit from these conversations. And then I started a membership community. So basically all the people that really care about these technologies and are deploying them in real buildings every day, I wanted to provide a space for them to all connect and share learnings. And then what I realized once that started was that community was the nerdiest and most experienced and the people that are really the most expert among us. And what I realized is that it wasn't quite accessible for the newcomers and the people that haven't been doing this for a long time. So the foundations course grew out of that. I wanted to provide a way to grow the pie and create more nerds and shorten the learning curve for the newcomers to the smart building space. And what it ends up looking like is, we have a bunch of total beginners that take our course, but then we have a bunch of people that have been around for a really long time and are just looking to meet people that are like-minded and think like them. So the course is basically, we take the students through this process called the smart building strategy. So the development of a smart building strategy. And I can take you through the different modules if you like, but that's an introduction to the course.
Yeah, no, it'd be good to learn a little bit more about the modules, because the smart building space is pretty hot topic at the moment, and the audience have requested to hear a little bit more about it. I said we'll be talking about it. So please tell us the key modules.
Yeah. So the smart building strategy process is really designed to, once you get through all the modules, you should have gone through all the different ways that you could mess up smart buildings. So it was designed backwards. So when I developed the course, I thought back in my career, all the projects that have gone by the wayside. And so what that ended up with is these 5 weeks that kind of make up the smart building strategy process. So we start with stakeholders. So why we need smart buildings depends on the who that we're talking about. What we really like to do is start with those humans and the outcomes that the humans need in order to get their jobs done better. And that could be a building occupant, it could be a building owner, it could be any of the different service providers and vendors in the space as well. So there's a vast network of stakeholders. Second, we go through the ideation process, which is really the development of use cases for a new technology. So really cutting through the fluff around smart buildings technology and getting into exactly how technology is going to help those stakeholders. Next, we get into what we call assessments. So most smart building technology sits on top of existing building systems. So your HVAC, your lighting, your access control, your metering, your elevators, and those systems traditionally and, sort of still can get in the way of enabling those outcomes for our stakeholders. They just a lot of times haven't been built to enable the stuff that we want out of our technology. So really assessing those systems to understand what can get in the way, we call those landmines. So you don't want to wait until you're deploying a new technology for those landmines to blow up your project. Next is research. So you talked about how broad the space is. So we really teach our students to sort of categorize and understand the vast marketplace for new technologies, because like you said, there's just a ton of new solutions, a ton of new startups. I track over 250 different startups in the space. And so really helping people understand and cut through, okay, this technology is in this category, here's what it does, and really teaching them to track how the space is evolving over time. And then finally, fifth is the business case, right? There's a lot of growing momentum in the smart building space, and that's for many different reasons. But when someone, a building owner, is actually deciding what to do in their building and deciding what to buy and how to buy it and when, it's really about the ROI, the return on investment. So we really cut through that fluff as well, as far as getting down to the exact ROI for this type of business that you're talking about and teaching students exactly what that means. So those are the first 5 modules that make up the smart building strategy. What we added last cohort is a 6th module for career planning. So if you're working on really wanting to make an impact in the smart buildings industry, we kind of conclude with how people can really make an impact in their career and plan that out. So that's it.
Beautiful. Nicely summed up. And everyone who's listening in today, we're going to be sharing a discount code. But strongly suggest getting involved and taking the Nexus Labs course. Here is a message from our sponsor, Michael Beckerman from Cretech.
Hey, this is Michael Beckerman from Cretech. I'm here to invite you to check out Cretech Plus, the first streaming platform devoted to innovation and technology in the built world, featuring new weekly videos from the world's leading real estate and tech professionals. The first month of streaming is absolutely free, and then you could use the code LMRE to receive 25% off your second month. To learn more, visit plus.cretech.com.
Speaking of taking the course, we have obviously Ramya, who's joining us from JLL Technologies, who is one of the more experienced leading women in the smart building space. So Ramya, how did you hear and get involved in the course? How's it benefited what you're doing at JLL Technologies as well?
Yeah, let me start by maybe giving a little bit of a description about JLL Technologies, because your listeners may not be familiar with that particular group. We are a division of JLL, very recently established about 2 years ago. And it's a first of its kind, because we're looking at bringing in CRE experts with world-class technologists to deliver solutions, right? That transform the way we acquire, manage, operate, and experience space. And it's such an exciting area because it's so cross-functional and interdisciplinary domains are literally colliding with each other. And I've been working in the space of IoT for well over a decade. As you mentioned earlier, I've had the privilege of working across various industrial verticals, right? The manufacturing, oil and gas, energy sector. And each time, when you build a product and you deploy it, you very quickly realize that technology is just only one component. The success of the product really depends on the people and the processes that are in play in that vertical. And so when I joined JLLT, I very quickly wanted to get a sense for that in the building space. And, I deployed products in smart buildings, but to get to the heart of incentives, like James mentioned, who are the personas who are actually going to use your product? I think that's a learning ramp up that the Nexus Foundation course provides really nicely. And so it was a great balance of presenting both sides of the house, the technology side and the commercial real estate side. And I would strongly encourage anyone who's new or even experienced in this field to take a peek at that curriculum, because there are some modules that can really accelerate your learning in this area.
Thank you for that so much. James, is there anything you'd like to add there?
No, I mean, that's exactly what we're going for. I think what I realized in my career before I've created the course was that the learning curve was just too long. So it took me messing up a project and then spending long nights and weekends in the office fixing it to learn a lot of the lessons that we try to bake into the curriculum. So that's exactly the goal, is sort of shortcutting that learning curve.
And you've both obviously been in this space for longer than a lot of people. I think most of the listeners here are sort of fairly green, but eager to learn more. What are the major changes you've seen in the smart building space? And this could obviously probably tie into one of another questions you want to go into, the main areas. And I'm sure that's changed, especially in the last 5 years since the, adoption of technology within smart buildings. Ramya, maybe this is something you'd like to start us off with.
Yeah. I remember back in the day, we were all excited about smart cities. And I feel like we've come a full circle. Today, a decade later, we were still excited about smart cities. We're still grappling with what that exactly means. And when we started this journey, I think the conversation was dominated by where can we instrument, what sensors can we add and what's networking look like? And those presented themselves as smart building elements. But I think we've come a long way because leaders are waking up to the fact that you need fundamental infrastructure and domain expertise to support smart buildings. So you start seeing titles like Chief Data Officer, Chief Innovation Officer, Chief Sustainability Officer. I'm sure there's going to be a Chief Smart Building Officer at some point. And they're all so interrelated. And that's one of the exciting and challenging parts of smart building, is because they touch so many different aspects, whether it's sustainability, it's new revenues, it's innovative business models. You just have to get that right to have a successful smart building initiative. What I think has changed is kind of a realization. One of my favorite quotes from Einstein is, we can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So I think we've woken up to that and we're figuring out new ways to differentiate ourselves. But I'm definitely way more optimistic now that we have a convergence of technology and a very pressing need of the hour with sustainability here today to drive new changes.
Awesome.
I founded LMRE back in 2019 with co-founders Brad Bartlett and Richard Lloyd, because we knew there was a better way to recruit, a more comprehensive, client-led focus, delivering exceptional talent on demand to the movers and shakers of the prop tech world. LMRE was founded with the foresight of being innovative and on the front foot of reimagining real estate landscape. Today, we expertly match the leading prop tech minds of innovative organizations who are shaping the future of the built environment. If you're hiring now or looking to be hired, why not check it out at lmre.tech. And one of our specialist consultants will be in touch to listen to your needs and come up with a tailored solution for your business or your own personal job search. Now, 90% of recruiters who post through LMRE get quality candidates through the site in just one day. So why not try it out at www.lmre.tech.
James, what about you? Any sort of major changes you've seen, or maybe changes that some of your course takers have seen as well since studying with you?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what Ramya just said, internal teams. I'm seeing a lot of people come into my course and they're part of a smart buildings team within an organization that didn't used to have that team, right? It's like a new industry is being created, and it's a subset of engineering firms. It's a subset of real estate companies. It's a subset of technology companies, right? I've had Google on my podcast, many people from Google, and they have smart buildings teams now within this technology company. And so you're seeing this industry getting created that, sort of didn't used to be there before. Ramya also talked about infrastructure. So I think a lot of what these smart building teams are realizing is that they want to head down the road of making their buildings smarter, but they have this infrastructure that's not enabling them to do that. And so I think a lot of people, what's changed recently is John Clark, you just said on my podcast a couple of weeks ago that we can't have the app store if we don't have the iPhone first, or we can't buy an application if we don't have the app store first, I think is how he worded it. But basically what he's saying is if you don't have the enabling infrastructure to get to our use cases, then that is the place to start. And so that's an interesting realization that I think more and more people are realizing. And then lastly, I'd just say the same thing as Ramya, that energy efficiency. When I started my career in 2010 as an energy manager, it used to be a fringe thing. It used to take many meetings, 6-month, 1-year sales cycles to get to where someone was even paying attention to energy management. And now it's central to the business of real estate. And we can talk about why that is, but we're in this moment where it's like there used to be just a few of us in this little industry. And now this is going from a fringe to a core, a central thing.
It's like a proper asset class, isn't it now? The sort of whole, the smart buildings technology space, it's taken seriously. Yeah, a huge amount. Well, from what I've learned, and I've only been reading about it for 2.5 years. So I know I have a lot to learn, but how our clients vary from the consultancies, the funds, the investors, the, small and big tech companies. Now, yeah, it seems what everyone sort of is. And it's another new craze, which isn't a craze. It's here to stay. I kind of wanted to ask you, this leads on from what you were saying as well, James. We spoke about changes, but changes also, as you guys know better than I do, causes challenges. And that could be a challenge that the industry is facing. Maybe you guys are facing, working with sort of Ramya's team, sort of like you both said as well, hiring new people to this industry. But it's not just the hires. I think after you make these hires, it's also getting the wider business to maybe adopt some new technology or look at their building differently. I don't know. What are the sort of major challenges you both experience? Ramya, if you want to go first.
Yeah. How long did you say this podcast was supposed to be? No, I think one of the main challenges is just being able to design the right products. It's factoring in design thinking. You're not building technology for the sake of it. You're building technology and products that empower an end user. And that end user, in this case, could be a chief engineer, it could be an investor, it could be an ESG expert, a CSO. Being really thoughtful about how we design products, I think, is going to be a key challenge as we try to lower the barrier to adoption. And just with everything else, this is where the physical and the virtual collide. So it gets a little more harder to scale out new products. And the challenge is in being thoughtful about how we scale as we go into the smart building space. But yeah, given my product background, I really think every single designer out there should consider who your end user is. That's number one. And number two, how are they incentivized? None of these products will scale if we don't have the right ROI schemes in place. And that's where I think we'll see a lot of new innovation and the business models in this industry.
Interesting. And I guess, James, on your side, what are the sort of key challenges that you've faced, I guess, throughout your career as well?
There are a lot of them. Like Ramya started to say, how much time do we have? But I think the one I would key in on for this audience is if you want to have a real conversation about smart buildings, in order to really cut through a lot of the fluff out there, the answer, there is no one size fits all, right? So there's no one challenge that you can say applies to every situation. It really depends on so many different factors. And the smart buildings industry is so diverse and every project is different. And I think that's one of the key challenges out there. And let me just give one example. There are actually about 3 or 4 different smart buildings industries, depending on how big the building is. So if you look at a 1 million square foot hospital, that's completely different than your 7-Eleven convenience store on the corner. And the answers to a lot of questions around smart buildings change based on what type of building you're talking about. And especially as the industry starts to transition from what I call back of the house to front of the house. So the smart buildings industry used to be focused on back of the house sort of operational improvements. So I'm going to save energy and that's going to help with utility bills. Now it's transitioning into more front of the house, which is I'm going to help run this building or run this business better. If it's an office building, I'm going to help drive increased rent prices, or I'm going to help this tenant business run their business better by engaging their employees and automating their tasks. And especially as you start to talk about that front of the house, top line revenue of the business, you're talking about all these different industries, right? And it depends on what building you're talking about. If it's a grocery store, you have totally different use cases than that office building, for example. And so the challenge is there really isn't one answer, right? It just really depends. And I think that hurts the scalability of a lot of the technologies that are in the marketplace.
And now we sort of covered challenges. I should have actually started the podcast to ask you guys why you both got to this space, because it also goes into the final question before the LMRE part, the true importance of automating our buildings in the future. And I know you're hugely interested in obviously the sustainability side of it, and obviously us sort of hitting our sustainability goals. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Why is it so important to you, and why should our listeners today be taking this as a serious area of real estate and what they should be doing to their buildings?
Yeah, buildings contribute to 40% of global emissions. I think any listener out there has probably heard of a climate crisis or is personally facing a climate disaster, ranging from wildfires to hurricanes to floods. We have small countries running into famines induced by a climate crisis, billions of people starving. There's a clear call to action, I think, for everyone here in terms of being able to do what we can do to reduce emissions, reduce our carbon footprint, and achieve net zero goals to keep with the Paris Accord. So that's the person, the professional, start interweaving very quickly where sustainability is concerned. And JLL provides a global scale to have that impact. And that's why I'm here one step at a time. We'll make this work together.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And James, on your side, why is it so important to you and I guess to our future building?
Yeah. So I started my career as an energy manager, energy engineer for that exact reason. So I have the sort of same mission, same driver, same reason I get up every day in the morning. And I think what I realized after 10 years doing energy management is that in order to actually solve the energy problem in buildings, we need this more comprehensive technology approach, right? There aren't enough energy engineers and energy managers to even cover the 6 million buildings in the US, the commercial buildings in the US, and then expand that to the world. We just don't have enough engineers out there. So what technology represents to me is a way to automate tasks, right? Make it so those engineers, their expertise can be leveraged across more and more buildings to accomplish that outcome, which is getting to zero carbon real estate as fast as possible. And it's automating systems as well. So making it so buildings can be controlled in better ways than they are before. And to me, that inherently means because the people that operate buildings have so much on their plate, they often talk about how energy is 12th on their list of priorities. I hear that a lot. So being able to also solve all of their other top 11 priorities, and maybe energy is a byproduct of that. That's what technology represents to me, is getting all of the other stuff on their list accomplished as well. And so that's why I feel like I needed to expand into the broader smart building technology.
Yeah, thank you for that, James. We need a few more people, big consultancies and agencies to do this Nexus Labs course and sort of start controlling their buildings a bit better.
Hi, this is Nelson from Property Quants. I'd like to invite you to join our Introduction to Data Science and Machine Learning for Real Estate seminar. To learn more, visit propertyquants.com/seminar and use special code LMRE20 on Eventbrite for a discount.
We're coming to the final part of the show, which is the LMRE part. Ramya, if you would like to go first and talk us through which could be your main lesson you've learned in your successful career so far. As you mentioned, anyone, a product, a service, maybe even someone at JLL Technologies, shout out. Is what's been the most rewarding aspect of working within our space, and what are you most excited about in the future at PropTech? Happy to talk you through it as well as we go along. And if you can start us off with one of the main lessons you've learned in your career, that'd be fab.
I can kick off by saying one day or day one. What I mean by that is if you're excited about getting out of bed to go to work, then pause and introspect, because we really live in a very non-traditional time now. And there's this convergence of living and work, and not just in the sense of your physical space, but in that of what you want to do. And your passion can be very professionally rewarding. something that was unthinkable a few years ago. So if you were to step back and evaluate, there's always an opportunity to find something that gets you going, then the time is now. That's my big lesson. I always ask myself when I get up, okay, am I excited about, logging into the journal or not?
Yeah. And what about, is there anyone or service or something you'd like to mention?
Yeah, definitely a lot of shout outs, but a shout out to the folks, especially in property management teams out there who are pioneering new tech, right? It's not always easy to be the first in any space, especially when it's disruptive tech. So a shout out to all the folks in the building space who are trying these new technologies and figuring out what works. I also want to do a shout out to the Afghan women out there as they work in perilous conditions to create a future for themselves and their daughters. So you aren't forgotten. If I could use your forum for that.
And the most rewarding part?
Most rewarding part of working in PropTech. Let's see. I think it's the people, right? I mean, there's no planet B, and I'm often just blown away by the deep expertise and passion all of the startup vendors are bringing in to solve these urgent problems. In a very traditional word, there's no dearth of commitment. And there are companies that have been around for decades and they haven't given up. I just love that tenacity. And we need more and more of those folks. So definitely the people have been an amazing part of working in PropTech here.
Yeah, I completely echo everything you've just said. Those listening, James, Ramya and I were talking about some of the first events conferences, which we're all about to go to. And I literally can't wait to meet people in person. And I know there's going to be a huge amount of energy at these events. And yeah, it's pretty exciting. Okay, right. And so that was rewarding. And then what are you most excited about? Is it, God, it must be JLL Technologies are doing that. Pretty bloody exciting. It's like global domination and change.
Well, you said it there, but I just like Google's a verb. I think PropTech is no longer going to stand out as a specialized technology for buildings. It's going to become very much a part of the building fabric because you're going to have this phenomenal convergence of verticals because you're expanding from buildings to cities. You're going to touch utilities. You'll touch transport with autonomous vehicles, redesigning spaces from financing to construction. All of these different areas will need to interplay to tap into the power of the holistic solution, the holistic product suite. So buildings will no longer be just an isolated point in the system, right? It's going to be a living, responsive node that reacts dynamically to all these evolving factors. And so I'm just excited about the possibilities of the world in 5 to 10 years. The smart buildings is just an enabler. We're going to have these terrific new set of applications that we probably wouldn't even imagine right now, but they're out there waiting to be built. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you so much for that, and especially for your insights earlier. James, you're finishing off the podcast to get started with LMRA. So what's one of the major lessons you've learned?
This is a meta lesson, but just that learning, how important actually learning is. So what you knew yesterday, especially in smart buildings, isn't good enough. So always continuously learning. So that might be a cheating answer, but that's what I got for you. My shout out. So I want to give a shout out or mention to all the different people that help us with the course. So we have a cohort number 3 that's launching right now. And there are so many people besides me that I need to give credit to. So I'm just going to fire them off. Rachel, Mandy, Jacinda, Joe, Stefan, Chad, Harold, Eric, Rob, and John. All those people are coming together, and I hope I didn't miss anyone, but they're coming together, mostly volunteering their time to make the experience better for our students, which is awesome. Rewarding as an engineer, smart buildings are the juiciest problem. So I think Ramya said it. It's a technical problem. It's a human problem. It's a change management problem. It's an incentive problem. And so for just like the nerd in me, there are so many different layers, and you get up every day and you're just surprised by all the different nuances to it. And then really, I'm excited about the awareness, right? So like I said, it used to feel like such an uphill battle just to get people to pay attention. And so now the focus is on what we can do about it and how we can do something about it. And that part is actually the easy part. So we have the technology for the most part, maybe not embodied energy for new buildings. We don't have that quite down yet, but most of the tech is there to operate buildings better, operate buildings more efficiently. The know-how is there. It's just not fully evenly distributed yet.
Yeah, we got a hell of a lot to come. And I think everyone, it's almost like a massive promo podcast for your course, but I've had feedback from so many clients, professionals in the industry who've done it. I think, James, did you say, are you on your third cohort?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Ramya was in the second, but look, if you're looking to get a better understanding for it, please reach out to James. You'll be obviously sharing a code. Also, if you want to hear a bit more about what JLL Technologies is doing in the space as well, globally, you really need to follow their blogs and what they're doing. It's super interesting and exciting. And first thing first, thank you both for joining us, and we'll definitely catch up after the show.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Propcast, and a big thanks to our guests and our sponsors, Cretech and Reamtech. Make sure you visit our website, lmre.tech, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, keep up with our industry news and events, or if you're looking for your next career move, it's all on there. The Propcast can be found on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, where all good content is found. Whilst we're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate it if you could spread the word and tell a friend about it, or even write us a review. And I'll catch you next week.